Hello chess enthusiasts, my name is Miha and welcome to my chessrealm YouTube channel. So we are still at the Belgrade FIDE GP tournament. In the 5th round there was an interesting game between Alexei Shirov and Vladimir Fedoseev. Let's see what happened. Alexei Shirov had white pieces and he started with e4, c5, knight to f3, knight to c6, d4, c captures on d4, knight recaptures, knight to f6, knight to c3, and now e5 attacking knight on d4. So what do we have? We have a Sveshnikov variation of Sicilian defense, and by far the most common move is knight from d goes to b5, and this is what happened in the game. Knight goes to b5, threatening to jump on d6, forking both king and bishop. Of course, black can recapture with dark bishop, but to lose a bishop pair already in the beginning is maybe not seen as favorable by many players. So black plays d6 protecting, and now knight goes to d5, double attack on this c7 square, preparing to fork both king and the rook. So in this position black more or less has no other option but to capture with knight on d5. Now e-pawn recaptures, attacking knight on c6, and the most popular move is if knight goes back to b8, and the second most popular move is if knight goes to e7, and the latter happened in the game. Knight goes to e7, now c4 defending, black plays knight to f5, bishop goes to d3. Now this dark square bishop doesn't have a very bright future here on this diagonal, so black plays g6, preparing to fianchetto his dark square bishop. White castles king side, now a6, attacking the knight. Knight goes back to c3, and bishop goes to g7, preparing to castle on the king side. Now this knight on f5 is targeting this d4 square, which is a very strong outpost for black knight. So maybe white could try with knight to e4. If black would still try to conquer this square with a knight, white could play queen to a4 check. Now black can either lose the right to castle, or maybe black would try to defend with the queen to d7. In this case it's knight to d6, queen cannot capture because it's pinned. And of course if bishop goes to d7 protecting, again this pawn on d6 is defenseless. So here in this position black would have to play b5 protecting the check. Of course then black would capture with c pawn. A pawn cannot capture because rook on a8 is not protected, and now black would finally castle king side, but after b pawn captures on a6, of course white is 2 pawns up, but after f5 is a very strong response, attacking the knight. After knight goes, let's say, maybe to g5, we have e4 further putting his pawn. So maybe, I don't know, white would probably play bishop to c4, but then probably bishop captures on a6. After bishop recaptures, queen to a6, black cannot remove the bishop because queen is under attack. So after maybe I don't know, knight a6, then probably knight captures on a6, d pawn recaptures, queen captures bishop. Even if queen captures, rook captures, let's see where we are. This pawn on e6 is going to fall. It's still the material be equals, but this bishop is very powerful here on g7, targeting this rook. So black definitely has a lot of counterplay here. Okay, let's go back to our game. So white has a different plans. White intends to use the fact that b6 is a very weak square, preparing bishop to e3, later deploying on this b6 square, but this e3 square is protected by the black knight. So first white plays bishop captures on f5, bishop recaptures, and now bishop goes to e3. Now black finally castles king side, and now queen to b3, preparing this bishop to b6, further harassing black queen, and also later preparing with rook to c1, trying to take over this c file. So now black plays bishop to d3, attacking rook on f1. Of course white can respond with rook to d1, immediately attacking this bishop, but black can easily defend with e4. So actually there's no point in attacking this bishop with the rook, so white just follow his original plan. Rook from f goes to c1, and now black plays e4, cementing this bishop on d3. You might think this pawn on b7 is for free, but let's see if queen captures on b7. First we have rook goes to b8. Once this queen is gone, then black simply captures this pawn on b2. Of course queen to a6 doesn't happen actually, then black would probably play f5, preparing this very strong f4 pawn push. Well, white could try to defend with bishop to f4, but then we have this unpleasant g5 pawn push and later f4. So maybe after f4 again we have black captures en passant, and after white recaptures, black pushes f4, attacking bishop on e3. Maybe after bishop to f2 is the only move, but now rook captures here on b2, and now black doesn't need much. Even queen to a3 doesn't help. It's queen to g5 check. After, let's say, if king goes to h1, then rook simply captures this bishop. If, however, let's say bishop goes to g3, then simply rook to h2, removing the defender of bishop on g3. If king recaptures, queen to g3 check, king goes to h1, queen to h3, king to g1, and bishop to d4 checkmate. Okay, so in the game, white plays c5, trying with an action on the queen side. And now black responds with f5, generally, of course, with the intention of f4, trying to harass this bishop on e3. So now c-pawn captures on d6, black plays f4, attacking the bishop, and bishop goes to b6, attacking queen on d8. Now let's see, black definitely has an opportunity to capture this defenseless pawn on d6, but if black captures on d6, then bishop to c7 is a very strong move. Because if queen doesn't capture, let's say queen to d7, white plays d6, cementing this pawn and bishop here almost at the last rank. If, however, black captures bishop on c7, then you have a knight to e4 discover attack on queen on c7 and removing the defender of this bishop on d3. Well, here this position probably queen to c1, trading queen for a rook. Black would also capture this knight on e4. Well, let's see. If queen captures, rook captures, bishop captures. Still after rook to e1, white probably has enough counterplay even against, even with the queen against rook and two bishops. If, however, queen will go, let's say, to d7, then we'll have queen. First we would have d6 check. After king to h1, queen captures here bishop on d3. White is a pawn up, and this passed pawn here on d5 would secure the white's victory. So in the game, black plays queen to g5, preparing to harass here king on the king side, of course threatening with f3 and later targeting this pawn on g2. So actually this g2 square is going to have to be protected somehow. White has a dark square bishop, queen actually cannot go here on d1 and f1 because f1 is protected, so the only piece that can defend this square is knight on c3, so white doesn't have time to lose. d7 was played. Now after f3, white plays d6 check, king goes to h8, and now white plays g3. Black responds with queen to f5, preparing queen to h3 with checkmate on g2. So white plays knight goes to d5. Of course, this pawn on d7 is going to be captured sooner or later, but black first wants to drive this knight from d5 away. So queen goes to h3, knight goes to e3, protecting this g2 square, and now only black captures a pawn on d7. But white is on the move, plays rook goes to c7, attacking the queen. Queen captures another pawn on d6, and now rook from the a file goes to c1. Now both rooks are connected. Black, of course, has a bishop pair and is a pawn up, but this is a very bad position for black. White threatens with this rook to g7, very unpleasant threat. Let's see if black makes a random move. Let's say rook from a goes to b8. Rook simply captures on g7. Of course, black has no other options but to recapture, and after rook goes to c7 check, well, maybe the best option still will be if queen simply captures this rook, because after queen captures, bishop captures, rook to c8. Once this bishop is gone, black threatens with here checkmate on the first rank. Well, still here we have a bishop to e5 check, and after king goes somewhere, let's say white simply plays h3, avoiding this first rank mate. Okay, so let's say if queen doesn't capture this rook, then king on g7 has, let's say, 3 squares to go. Let's say if king goes to f6, Then white would probably play bishop to c5 attacking the queen. If queen captures the rook on c7, we have knight to d5 forking both king and the queen. If however queen goes, let's say, to e6, then we have bishop to d4 check. Of course, if king goes to g5, this queen defenses and white simply grabs the queen. If however queen goes to e5, then we have simply queen captures on e5, king recaptures, queen to d5 check, and after king to f6, knight to g4 checkmate. If however black would, in this position, black king would go back to h8, then we have queen to c3 check. Of course, if king goes to g8, queen to g7 checkmate. If however black defends the check with queen, we have bishop to d4 skewering this queen on f6. If however black defends with rook, simply knight to g4 double attack. Of course, rook is pinned. After rook on the last rank goes to f8 defending, still we have bishop to d4 again. Rook is twice defended, 3 times attack, and again white gained decisive advantage. And if, for example, king goes to h6, then we have a queen to again c3, targeting this g7 square with deadly mating threats. If black defends with rook to g8, we have h3, preparing a knight to g4 with check. Doesn't help actually anything. Even if black would try with rook to c8, again we have knight to g4 check. If king goes immediately to g5, then we have bishop to e3 with a check. If king goes to h5, we have rook to h7 check. King goes to g5, the only move, and after bishop to e3 check, the only move is king to f5, and now we have rook to f7 check. Of course, this fc square is multiple times attacked, so king would only go to e6, but after queen to f6 check, king can only go to e5, and after that queen to d4. Again, if king goes to e6, we have rook to f6. When this king is gone, this queen is also gone, and if, for example, king goes to c6, then we have knight to e5 check. Queen can capture, of course, that's the only move, because if a queen doesn't capture, after, for example, the only move king to b5, we have a4 check. After king to a5, bishop to d2, and now black can delay the mate for a couple of moves. But after queen to b4, we have checkmate. Okay, so let's go back to our game. So black realized that this rook to g7 is a serious threat, so rook to g8 was played, further protecting this bishop on g7. And now white responds with bishop to a5. White has a simple plan. Simply deploy bishop to d3, again putting a lot of pressure here on bishop on g7. First white would play rook to c5, and later with bishop to c with deadly attack, because as you can see, those rook have to be protected. So black responds with bishop to b5. Now white cannot play rook from the first rank go to c5, because black would play bishop to c6, and now this rook would not be connected anymore. So white doesn't have any a lot of opportunities. Rook captures this pawn on b7, and now black responds with rook from a goes to c8, offering the trade of rook. So now the best option would be simply capturing this rook on c8, and after rook recaptures, we would have bishop to c3, and that would be the winning move. Of course, if bishop captures, queen to f7 with here deadly attack on h7 square. But here in this position, white almost makes a fatal blunder. Rook goes to c2, and now black captures rook on c2, queen recaptures, and here in this position black has a chance to save the game, or I should say he could gain a draw, and the correct move was to play queen to c6, first of all attacking defenseless rook on b7, and also queen on c2. So here white would have no other options but to capture this queen on c6, therefore removing the most dangerous piece of the board, and the game would roughly be equal. But in the game, black plays rook goes to d8, another not very understandable move. I mean, white could simply easily capture this rook on b8. Now why didn't capture, I don't know. Maybe he was just afraid of this first rank mating threat, or I don't know actually. White played queen goes to b3. And now again black had a chance to equalize the game, and the correct move was rook to b7. Interference on the 7th rank. trying to provide some defense for his bishop on g7, but again black didn't fail to impress us. Black plays rook goes to c8, and that was a fatal blunder. Now white finally find the correct continuation. White played bishop goes to c3. First, threatening with the bishop to g7. g8 square is protected, so this is checkmate. Well, let's see. Of course, rook can capture on c3, but white recaptures or white exchange up. This is winning. If, for example, bishop captures on c3, we have queen to f7, threatening with checkmate on h7. There's nothing black can do about it. Of course, black can interfere with a couple of pieces, but that's it. If black tries to defend this bishop on g7, there's rook to g8. Again, we have rook captures on g7. After rook recaptures, queen goes to f7. Rook cannot capture because the spin is going to be checkmate very quickly. And if, for example, black tries with queen to f8, protecting this bishop on g7, of course, white could capture immediately, forking both king and queen. Well, let's see if bishop captures, queen captures, rook captures. Well, here black immediately plays rook to c1 check. White has no other option but to defend check with knight if still wants to keep the advantage. After king captures, black is going to play bishop to e2, therefore gaining additional rook. Still in this position, white would be winning, but if white would play correctly in this position after queen to f8, white would have to play queen to e6, again targeting this bishop on g7, and if queen recaptures, queen can capture rook. Bishop to c3 doesn't help. After that, pawn recaptures, white is still threatening with, let's say, queen to e5 with deadly attack. Rook to e8 doesn't help. Then we have a queen to b6 threatening with queen to f7, again with this deadly attack here on a h7 square. Of course, rook to e7 doesn't help. We have a queen to d6, and this rook is pinned. And after maybe rook to d8, after queen to c7, rook to d7, of course this rook is protected by the bishop, but then we have again queen to e6 check, and of course if queen goes to g7, we have rook to b8 mating the next move, and if, for example, king goes to g8, we have queen to e6 double attack on king and rook, and again this white gained decisive material advantage. Anyway, in the game, in this position, black realized there's no point in playing on, and therefore Vladimir Fedoseev in this position resigned the game. So I hope you like this game. I hope you have learned something from it. If you have any questions, my email is below in the description. Of course, I invite you to visit my Instagram page. That's it for now, and see you soon.